Please join me in welcoming Amy and our industry leaders panel. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'd like to start off our panel by just letting each of our panelists give you guys a quick introduction with their name, what your company does, what Texas markets are you active in, any big projects that you're working on, and anything else that you want to share with us about what it is that you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Beck. I'm the president and CEO of Beck Ventures. We are a close to 50-year-old company based here out of Dallas. Predominantly a master developer of master plan communities across the United States. But here in Texas, the two main projects that we're working on are actually in Dallas. One is we're the master developer going on our 28th year now of a town west of DFW Airport called Trophy Club. We are just completing now the last piece, which is the Trophy Club Town Center, which includes multifamily and other things in that development. And finally, after 8 years, have now broken ground on what is the old Valley View Mall, for those of you that know that area of Dallas. And that project is going to be a few $1 billion, have multifamily, mixed use, and is called Dallas Midtown.
All right, well, let's kick it off with our first question. So operational and development cost challenges are really at the forefront of everyone's minds these days. So I'd like to know what types of operational challenges are you guys seeing, and how are you coping with or overcoming those challenges? I know property taxes comes to everyone's mind, but what else are you guys seeing, and how are you coping?
So I think the question from an operations perspective is, we continue to have rising costs to operate these properties. And one of the things that we look at, and I'll kind of talk from the developer perspective, is how do we create or make these placemaking units and buildings that are actually increasingly more interesting for the tenants. What we focus on is mixed-use development. So it's all about placemaking, all the kind of principles of the Urban Land Institute, and other best practices. So what we're focusing on now are creating these outdoor rooms. And when you think about placemaking, streetscape, how to create not just the courtyard or the rooftop deck, but really create places that are outside, so that if you're, let's say, a block away from Main Street that has retail on it, when those tenants come back to the apartment, to those units, how do they stay outside, maybe in a lobby that spills out right onto the street? So trying to come up with these new and innovative ways to create that extra room, that third room. So we keep getting these apartments that are smaller and smaller and smaller. How do we ultimately create these other places for the tenants to enjoy, such that we can maybe hold down costs at least a little bit?
With technology in our sector advancing so rapidly, giving way to new business models like Airbnb, Sonder, and new ways of operating properties like different types of management software and tools, how is technology a factor in your 5-year strategy?
Okay, so since I'm in the middle going back and forth, most of the stuff's already talked about. I'll just take a little bit different tact again.
I'm about to mix it up.
Yeah, exactly. So from an AI perspective, I'll talk about the tenant experience related to artificial intelligence. We're actually looking at a lot of new things within both districts and in our buildings. So there's kind of three incumbents that we're having conversations with: Google, Amazon, and Samsung. And they're kind of all somewhat interchangeable in terms of the conversation. And so the question that we keep asking ourselves, which I'm sure a lot of you might be asking, is how deep do you go? What do you actually implement inside of these units? And then, is it basically backwards compatible related to the customer experience, and ultimately can it connect into things? Some of the more interesting things that we're looking at in terms of placemaking is actually doing it on the street. So artificial intelligence and AI on the street, like in the kiosks, connected into Wi-Fi, and then how that can connect back into the actual buildings themselves. So there's really some fascinating stuff that's going on. I'm under massive amounts of NDAs with all three companies, so I can't even figure out what I can tell and what I can't tell. But you can imagine the types of things as it connects into parking, as it connects into the types of things that you were talking about in terms of business intelligence with inside the buildings themselves that goes all the way into your accounting software and your maintenance and property maintenance software. And how all of that connects. So you really start not only getting the artificial intelligence giving you that feedback, but you actually get the physical humans that are talking to those machines that are helping to actually give you that data. So that's sort of where it really gets interesting, and then you start combining that with facial recognition, so you actually know the person that's actually making that comment in the hallway that's talking about things. So some things get kind of a little creepy in terms of how it's working, but it's all there. I mean, we're talking, the buildings that we're building now that aren't going to be open for 2.5 years, putting that technology in place now, it will be there in 2.5 years in terms of what all the things that are coming out.
Great. Scott, tell us what you're seeing from a development perspective. How is the availability of capital, and how is it impacting your business?
So for our business, it's a little different. We're kind of a contrarian in terms of how we look at things. So if the market's headed downward, we like that in terms of both buying in path of development or basically deals that fall out and owners that have debt on their property need to sell the land. With regards to the interest rates, also, obviously interest rates are kind of ticking down right now. We may see it tick down even more. So whereas the Fannie and Freddie may affect some deals, a lot of our transactions that we're doing are with traditional lenders, and those traditional lenders, those interest rates are going down right now, not up. So I'm also encouraged by seeing labor costs coming down. So that's a positive as well. So again, since we kind of take a contrarian view of the world typically, in these type of market environments, it's all about location. So if you got a good location and you're not basically building where everyone else is building, for an example here in Dallas, if you're not building an apartment building in downtown, you're probably fine. If you're building an apartment building in downtown and the market turns down, you're pretty much screwed right now. Now, I think that's not necessarily bad, again, for a company like us, because we're the ones that are going to come in and buy that from the bank when it goes back to the bank. But for anybody that's on the equity side that's investing in downtown Dallas or in these ultra metro markets, urban markets, you could have a big problem because they're basically overbuilt and effectively banking on additional people coming to the area. Again, we're in Texas, so a lot of people are leaving those other areas like California and coming to Texas or coming to Dallas or Houston or San Antonio right now. But if the spigot gets turned off, we all know what happens when that happens, as of like 8 or 9 years ago. So that's kind of my take. Right, and that's kind of what I was saying before, right? The issue is, where do you play in terms of the market? For the institutional guys, someone like yourself, for myself as a family office, we're kind of sitting there in the center, right? It's the people on the margins that have made improper decisions related to just what's going on in the marketplace right then, where the issues are.
I'm curious how these shifting demographics are impacting all of your businesses, and is it changing your strategy and how you approach the market? I
think what's interesting is these conferences over the past 10 years, we've all been talking about the millennials. In fact, your question was just about millennials. And everyone was saying, the millennials want these smaller units. They want to be in the urban infills and everything else. Now they're having kids, right? Or they have kids. The fact is that the things that we're reading over the past year or two that I've been reading now is that they want to go live in homes, right? Which is the same thing that I realized, that the rest of the people on these panel probably realized also, is that once you have those kids, 800 square feet's too small. 1,200 square feet's too small. And so I think we might be in for kind of a flip in terms of what we were just talking about, right? The millennials are moving out, and the older people are going to move back into these same places. But ultimately, it's a matter of what's the type of environment that you're giving them. When you talk about the apartments, right? And so those type of apartments may be different than what we traditionally were doing. So one of the projects that we're doing here in Dallas will be the first ever Lifetime Village. So Lifetime's the healthy way of living company based out of Minneapolis. And so we're doing a $350 million joint venture with them in building the first ever Lifetime Village, which will have a 20-story apartment building in the Lifetime Athletic Complex. So that complex, which will sit on 7 acres, will have a Lifetime Living, which will be the apartment building, which is basically geared towards an older, active adult. I mean, the average age in Lifetime is about 45 years old. So you're talking about the people living in there are going to be 55 plus, what you were just talking about before, in those apartments. And they're high-end, $3 square foot plus. It'll have 110,000 square feet of fitness in there. It'll have 50,000 square feet of Lifetime Work, which is like a WeWork type of thing, and then ground floor retail on the whole project. So it's that type of environment that I think will be really important to cater to, and that product that really just doesn't exist in the marketplace now as we look at these baby boomers who are interested in selling their house, not necessarily moving into a condo, especially if they want to stay in here in North Dallas, but want to go visit their grandkids in, you name it, other state.
So with large amounts of new supply that have entered all of our Texas markets, and rent growth softening, I know we touched on downtown and all the new supply there. We've got, rent growth is softening in a lot of our Texas markets. Will wage growth and employment growth and population growth be enough to outweigh all of that? And if you guys had a crystal ball, what's next? In our cycle here, I know everyone's a little nervous. We're long in the cycle, and everyone's wondering what's next. So, what do your crystal balls tell us?
Yeah, I think the reality is, to your point, we have more of a chance of deflation right now than we have of inflation, right? And so, we're in a really unique time. So I'll take the contrarian view to if you just were watching TV yesterday, right, that the sky is falling. Ultimately, over the next number of years, you're going to see these blips, and the market's going to react because it's Wall Street. But the reality is that we're energy independent. We basically have, we do have the strongest economy in the world, and we kind of, because of our energy independence, have, which just happened, 7 years ago, when we started getting all the fracking of gas, mostly from here in Texas, which is fortunate that we're in Texas. It's a different ball game now. And if we can keep interest rates correct, and not continue raising interest rates, which ultimately the Fed kept doing until finally they decided that they shouldn't be doing that anymore. I think we're in a pretty good spot from a country perspective. So does that mean that we're not going to see these momentary blips over the course of the next year, 2, 3 years? No, we'll definitely see those blips. We could certainly get in a war with Iran. There could be something that happens out of North Korea. There's all kinds of things that can happen, and gosh knows what happens at the next presidential election. But from an economics perspective, we should be fine. I think your baseball analogy is accurate. We could theoretically go on for quite some time at this point now.
Well, that's quite the view from the top.